get a chair. Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Mary Jane Berry, and this is our March 23rd GAPS meeting. And we want to thank you so much for coming. It's going to be, I promise, a very interesting meeting. You can see we got a pretty good crowd, but I'm sure we got some more coming in. I walked around earlier to introduce our sponsors and our speakers, and so we will be giving them a formal introduction here. So what I'm going to do right now is go in and open up our PowerPoint. Okay, and then let me do a share screen real quick on my Zoom so you can see it. Okay, share. And there we go. Okay, super. Deb, can you see that okay?
Looking good.
Super. So y'all always hear me periodically holler out to Deb. Deb is in her home, and she is my extra right arm and left arm because she is monitoring that aspect of it. Many of you guys know or may not know, we do record these, so you can always find these videos as a recording on our website. So I'm Mary Jane Berry, and I want to say thank you so much for joining. This is going to be a great meeting. And I want to say thank you to Deb also for always being here. Door prizes. Want to be sure to remind you, did you get a ticket for your door prize? We got a few door prizes. And again, if Dave promised you a car or a boat or something like that, disregard. He doesn't have it, but he always promises that. Yeah. And this is the agenda for today's meeting. And let's see if I can, I'll put that right there so it's a little bit smaller, not in y'all's way. Okay, so we had some refreshments over here, and then we'll do the welcoming, and I want to do some just brief slides for introductions for our sponsors. And we got great speakers today, Josie Zamora and Teresa Shapiro, and you're going to really enjoy this. So want to let you know about that. And then Janie Bush, who does our GAPS vocal class, will be here to help us with some voice exercise. The first meeting sponsor I want to be sure and let you know about is Supernus, but unfortunately they are not here, so I don't see them, but Will does work very closely with us, and you can see these are some of the meds that they have. He hopefully will be here next month, but yet they still send some finances to help us out because we now need to pay for the facilities. So I want to shout out to Supernus. Also, though, we do have Candace. Candace is over here. This is for Medtronic. And thank you. She brought some fruit and cookies, but more important, she's got lots of good information. And so feel free to stop by and say howdy to her, or at least thank her so much. And let's see. Next one is Abbott. And I've got Damon. Damon Dennett's back there. And he, of course, is always a welcome person. Just as a reminder, Damon is the board, our GAPS board fundraising chair, and he is doing great. But standing right next to him, because I don't have a slide for him, is Stephen. Stephen is our board president. So, yeah. So these guys, some of you might think, oh, a board member, this is kind of boring. Let me tell you, at our meetings, we really have a lot of fun. There's a lot of laughter going on, and it's just a fun time. We have another board member here, Julie, if you'll just kind of stand up or at least wave. This is Julie Fitzgerald, and she is another board member, and we just couldn't do it without them all. And then, of course, last but not least, it's here is Patty, my own other right arm, left arm. Patty's our board secretary. Yep. So we are officially a nonprofit, and that's why we're doing, raising money and trying to raise money, because we're going to be bringing some really cool things to you. One of which will be a symposium. Oh, and that's going to be our vocal. Yes, that's it. She's already practicing to make sure that we can hear good because we're going to learn to speak good. So no problem, Janie. Okay, Antonio, oftentimes we see Antonio Armand, but this time we have Kim Davenport. Kim is over here, and he is with Inbrija. Now, if you're familiar with Inbrija is when you have off times, and it is a inhaled version of the carbidopa levodopa. So please stop by and visit with him, and thank you for the cookies. Okay. And then we also have Arcadia, but they're not here, and they talk about Nuplazid, which is for delusions or hallucinations. If you out there ever feel like that you would like to know more information about this, and you say, Mary Jane, who's the rep? Feel free to always contact me, and I can get the reps for you so that you can speak with them directly. Okay, now these are going to be just quick announcements, but it was in my newsletter. By the way, well, it was in my email. I send out 2 emails a month. And these emails, the first of the month will always have the link to the newsletter. The newsletter's got lots of stuff in it, but the email is just my way of my conduit to send out the newsletter. But I have a lot of information in the email. This one was just in the last email, and it is they're calling it a festival. And what they've learned in research is that we do a lot better, everyone, when you bring humor and creativity into your life, but they have found a tremendous improvement with Parkinson patients when they bring humor and creativity in their life. So taking off of that, we are going to be starting some art classes coming up. We have a art instructor. We have some funding for it. I just now need to find a facility for it, but we will be starting art. But this one is going to be in Austin. It'll be free. They're asking for a $10 donation, but you get a lunch out of it. And it's going to be improv and teach storytelling to improve the quality of life. All of the information is in my email, but I mean, for an opportunity like this, it's going to be really, really good. I know we have at least 6 people already going, but think about it. If you're free, and this is going to be April 1st, and if you are free on that Saturday and you want to make a trip to Austin, this would be a great thing to go to. Okay. And also because I showed interest in it, they made me a sponsor. So I'm going to have a table there. So come by and say hi to me. I'll have candy. I promise. Okay. Another cool thing I want to be sure and tell you about. I was going to get that thing just wants to stay on there. This is Age of Central Texas. I work very, very closely with them. We got a great relationship. But April 15th, they are going to have a workshop, and it's going to be talking about transportation options for adults. And that does include us in Williamson County. So this is another good one. Again, it was in your email. Then this one is really cool coming up. This is going to be in San Antonio. So if you think you want to spend a day in San Antonio, it is going to be bilingual. So even if you don't speak Spanish, there's going to be everything will be in English too, but they're going to have a separate bilingual that'll be covered in also for those in Spanish. We're really trying to get out. We even have our own Spanish support group, Spanish speaking support group. Unfortunately, I need help to get the word out. I've had several meetings and nobody's come. But if you know anyone who's Spanish speaking only, and Parkinson does not have any barriers at all, it hits many of those folks too. But I want to include them in so we can share a lot of our information. But this is going to be great. It's going to be free. There's a luncheon included with it. And this is going to be on April 19th. This is 19th. So yeah, April 19th. So anyway, think about this. Again, it's also an email. Patty, are you going to tell me something? Okay, cool. Okay. And I'll do that right. Let me finish it. Oh, educational luncheons. Oh my gosh. I got to tell you about that. We have some sponsors now. They're wanting to talk about their medication specifically. And we had our first one last month. Anita, if you can stand up. Anita Culver is my liaison and lead on that. And she is doing a fabulous job. And we meet at the Georgetown Library, and it's a catered lunch. Again, all free. We learned about the Nuplazid drug, hallucinations and delusions. It was very, very interesting. We had 38 in attendance. So we got another one coming up. The next one coming up is going to be on May the 12th. I will be advertising it, and you'll be, well, on the next one, I'll have some information on how we sign up. Anita and I'll be still working with that rep on that. It'll be Friday, May 12th. Again, lunch is included at the Georgetown Library, and it's going to be on off times. You're going to learn about off times and some of the treatments for off times, which in this case will probably be Ambrosia, but there may be other things that they'll be talking about. Okay. And then we go into all of our stuff, but Stephen, come on up if there's something you would like to say. Yeah, because we offer some of our other free support groups, but this is our board president, Mr. President.
Thank you. It's actually chair, but that's okay. I just want to do a quick announcement, and I was actually prompted by Patty to do so, and I appreciate the call out. Everything that you see that is a result of mostly Mary Jane's effort, but also all the people that make this meeting happen, and Julie and Damon and Patty's work, and all that stuff. People that aren't even here. Uh, it looks like a very well-oiled machine because Mary Jane has done it 1,000 times. We really still do need help. Really not in necessarily this setting. Thank you all. We have really good help and really good attendance here at these meetings. We really need help on some of the work behind the scenes, like some of the administrative work or some of the like building some of the infrastructure out, right? Because again, because of all those people I just named, it's a growing group. It's growing all the time, but we need help, especially if you're tech savvy. Anyway, if you have any of your time that you are willing to help out with gaps, we would love to talk to you. You can connect with me, Mary Jane, Patty, Damon, Julie, anybody really. But please throw your name in the hat if that is something that you're open to. We'll find a good spot for you, and we want to keep that kind of front of mind at some of these meetings. Okay, so anyway, I just wanted to give that a quick plug. So thank you all very much for listening.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah. And some of it is not going to be a big obligation of time. Some of it might be just taking names on a list, like for our educational luncheon, that we can just have somebody contact so we can keep a list there. We're not talking anything hard. Some of it might just be helping me with a little administrative stuff. I can get behind you guys, as you probably have noticed sometimes on my emails. But in any case, anytime if you feel like you've got a little bit of time and you can do it at home, oftentimes that's all the help I need. Just give me a holler. Okay, caregivers. Oh, I got to tell you about this. Caregivers, we have a wonderful caregiver support group. We usually average between 15 and 20 people that attend. You are all given time to talk. It's wonderful. And that's going to be the second Thursday of the month at 2:00. We meet in the education buildings over here. GADS is our DBS meeting, and we've been on hold, but we are going to have our first meeting in April, and that meeting will also be in the education building right over there. But here's something really cool. Dr. Swallow will be our speaker at that one, and it'll be a very much smaller, intimate thing in that you can really ask questions, talk to him. So if you sometimes have a hard time getting in to talk to him, or if sometimes there's a question you want to ask, particularly if it's about deep brain stimulation, but even if it's not totally about that, he's a captive audience at that point. You can grab him real quick. But in any case, for sure, I hope you can come. Again, I'll be advertising it, so read those emails and the newsletter. Okay. And then our mantra is, of course, as you well know, to educate and to exercise and to socialize. And so with that said, we offer, and I combined the slides right here. Hopefully you can see it really, really good. Oh, we were gonna turn that one light out. Hey, Carol, can you turn that one light out? Let's see if that'll work, if you don't mind, so y'all can see some of these pictures better. This is our vocal exercise and music therapy, and we're gonna see if this light. There we go. Can y'all see that better? Is that working for y'all? Okay, super. Okay, anyway, this is Janie, and Janie is over here, or over where, somewhere. Anyway, she is going to be our speaker a little bit later, and we'll do our exercise segment with her. But this is our class. We have a lot of fun in there. We really, really do. And we're doing voice therapy, which is actually with a speech therapist. And then we also sing, or we just have a great time. Then below that is chair yoga. And we are meeting the chair yoga. We meet across the street at the Church of Christ in the atrium going into the sanctuary. So it's a nice big area, very well lit. And we really need more folks because it's so good. And our donations paying for these instructors to come. So you can come, and the care partner can come, even family. I don't care, So it's just, we really want to utilize this free service that we have. So again, it's always going to be in your emails. And in ping pong, Dawn, some of y'all may have met Dawn, just wave your hand. Dawn is helping to get ping pong started at the Georgetown Rec Center. Now, some people are going to ping pong in Sun City, which is certainly fine, but not everybody can go unless you're a resident in Sun City. So Dawn is so good and has worked with the Georgetown Rec Center, and it's in my emails as well on my website. If you ever think you'd like to play ping pong, he's the man to help us get it started. And now for our speakers. Our speakers is finally, they're probably wondering, will she ever let me up? I promise they will. And the first speaker we're going to have, Josie, do y'all want to come in? Like you come in and you'll introduce Teresa? Oh, okay. Our first speaker is going to be Josie Zamora. And Josie is a registered nurse with a bachelor's degree. And then she also has her master's of science. She has done surgical critical care, home health, community education, is a advanced nurse practitioner. She has been living here in Georgetown since 2012, served on the Commission for Aging inaugural board, which was in 2015. She has received some scholarship and awards through the Jill Earl Waddy Endowment Scholarship. But one of the ways that you may know her more was she was the founder and got the Gift of Time started. She got that one going and started the Living Well with Dementia Education series. She now is the founder of this new company, which is Care Partner to Caregiver. So we're going to let Josie talk, and then she will introduce Teresa, who is the attorney that is going to talk about elder law. So Josie, if you want to come on up here. Thank you so much. And okay, and you have to talk real close there, and I'll get your slide.
Okay. So I want to thank Mary Jane for asking me to come and speak with you guys. I've known Mary Jane since 2015, and we actually met at a nonprofit fair when I was starting up a nonprofit right here in Georgetown. So our relationship has grown, and I'm very grateful that she asked me to come and speak with you today about care management. So I'm going to, first of all, so one of the things I always do before any presentation is, of course, do a lot of research to see kind of what is the latest facts and the latest figures or the latest treatments for people who are living with a particular disease. Now, my personal experience living with someone who has memory loss was my mother. She had Alzheimer's and lived with it for 14 years. And so I know the journey well. And I can tell you that we surrounded her by family. There were good days and there were bad days. But I can tell you, I have never regretted being her caregiver. And until this day, I speak with other caregivers and they have the same story. I've never heard anyone say that they've regretted being a caregiver. It is always an honor to care for someone that you love so much, even in the most difficult times. So what I do as a care manager is rooted in this passion of working with caregivers because of my own personal journey. What I'd like to do is kind of step back just a few minutes. This is information that I was given permission to use by the Parkinson's Movement Alliance. Thank you, Mary Jane. Because of Mary Jane, I've become friends with a lot of the people involved with Parkinson's. Also, Kimmy, who's a very good friend. I met her last year at one of our conferences here. And so I stay in touch with her, and I attend also online a lot of the Parkinson movement webinars that they give. And why I'm bringing that up is because I want to share with you kind of what is happening, kind of a thread that's going on that I see a lot with caregivers. So the Parkinson's Movement Alliance has a survey that was put out in 2022 that talked about a movement care support ecosystem. And what they're referring to is the people that surround you, the family, the caregiver, and the person living with the disease. And what they're finding is that the better support group you have, the better it is to manage the disease. And hopefully what we're seeing is a decrease in caregiver burnout. Now, one of the things that they said about this particular, oh, thank you. So I'm going to move this slide just a little bit. Let's see. There should be, I know you can't see this and I apologize for that, but what it shows is all the people that are involved with someone who has Parkinson's. So they sent out a survey to caregivers and they say, tell us who's on your team. And so they were able to actually put all the information together. And what I want to point out, and I'm sorry this doesn't show, but we can send you this particular slide because the Parkinson's Movement Alliance said we can share this information. But they're also looking at what happens to the caregivers when they leave the clinic. Who is their support system when they're gone, when they're outside of the hospital or outside of the clinic? What they find is a lot of physicians' office, and I love physicians, I love working with them. Sometimes they don't have a social worker or a care manager or a case manager to help the families. You might find it in a big institution, but some of the smaller practices don't have that. Now, the physician that presented at this particular webinar kept saying, when the patients have support from a social worker, when they have support from a nurse, when they have support from a community member that's out in the community addressing issues that are in the home, the families do better. The families do better. Now, that's one study, one survey. The Alzheimer's Association also does a lot of research with caregivers, and they are my go-to with what I do, caring for people who have memory loss. And what they find is that they are now centered on person-centered care, person-centered care. In the past, we used to always kind of focus on the disease, give them a pill for that, give them this treatment, give them that. But then we didn't really incorporate a lot of what the families go through. Especially when they're in their homes. What is the situation at home? What do they need help with? What kind of support do they need? So in 2018, the Alzheimer's Association put out recommendations of how we, like myself, should work with families to support them, to be able to keep them stable at home, to be able to hopefully reduce a caregiver burnout. They're not the only ones who are supporting this idea. Medicare and Medicaid also now has looked at this and said, we're not going to just treat the person with the pills, with the disease and all this other stuff. That's great. We want to look at what are you doing with the client when they go home? What are their values? What is important to them? Who is their support system? And if you go to the Medicare's website, it's right there and it goes in much more detail. Which now brings me to what I do. So what is care management? What is, why do I need to know about it? I hope that I present enough information that you would consider this as an option to assemble your support team. Care management is actually what used to be known as geriatric care managers. And there's a very large association called the Aging Life Care Association, and I'm a member of that. And the reason I'm a member of that is because we have a code of ethics and a standard of practice that we all have to follow. So care managers may have their own practices and may actually have a specialty in their practice, but we all have to kind of follow the same standards of practice and also follow our own discipline's standard of practice as well. So care management, you'll hear that word a lot from me, is actually really saying that I belong to this bigger group called the Aging Life Care Professionals, and they are all over the United States. So what is an aging life care professional? And I'm sorry again that this slide is not showing. I don't know if we can get it darker in here, but usually it's nurses, registered nurses, social workers, people that study gerontology. We also see attorneys that are care managers. Occupational therapies now are part of this discipline. And so there's a variety of care management opportunities out there for people who have certain needs that they can be called on. It doesn't have to strictly be a nurse, although nurses sometimes work with another discipline like occupational therapy. Usually all of us that belong as care managers have to have special training. We have to have a background in what we're doing. And my background mostly was working with a lot of people living with dementia. That was my specialty. So in order to become a member of this particular organization, I kind of had to get an approval of what do you do, what kind of degree do you have, and what are your credentials. And that's important for you to know, because when you hire someone that's a care manager, you want to make sure that they're following a code of ethics and they're also following a standard of practice. These agencies are all over, like I said, the United States. There's several of them in Austin. To my knowledge, right now, I think I'm the only one that's a care manager within the area that doesn't belong to a bigger company. We all follow a code of ethics, as I mentioned before, and I want you to know the cost. And the cost is important because for some people, it's whether they can afford it or not. So this was about a year ago. The cost hourly fee is between $100 and $250. So it just depends on who you're calling. They are going to give you their hourly rate. This is more of a private pay service. It is not covered by Medicare. But here's what I want to share with you. A lot of services that are covered by Medicare go there first. Use your Medicare services first. For example, if you're a person who needs skilled nursing at home or medication management at home, get the care that you need from the service that's going to pay it like Medicare. That's important because you want to be mindful not only of the care, but also your budget. Remember, we all want to live a very long time, but when we have a chronic condition, there's a lot of cost involved in that. So I just want you to be very mindful of the cost. I'm not saying I don't want a job, but I'm just saying be careful of what's out there to make sure you use the other services as much as possible and when possible. What do we do? Well, it's a variety of things. We are a patient advocate, so we communicate with your physician. We communicate with any family member that you want us to communicate. We monitor the individual's situation, the illness, how are they doing? How is the caregiver doing? We also go into the home, make a home assessment. How are things at home? Are they safe? Are they not safe? We advocate for you quite a bit. So that's getting services. Sometimes care managers help the client if they've been denied something, help it repeal it as much as they can. Get hopefully the legal help. They'll make some suggestions of whom you might want to call. If you don't have an attorney that's working with you, we don't provide legal advice. That's not what we're doing, but we give you options or suggestions of who you can be working with to make sure you get the proper care. The other thing that I want to talk about is Aging life care professionals, care managers, again, might be all different than in each practice. Some of them work with people with intellectual disabilities. Some people work with a specific age group, maybe a younger population, even though, like I said before, this is under the geriatric realm. And some people work, like I do, work with people who are living with someone who have memory loss. So one of these things, this slide here is actually kind of a recommendation or a suggestion of the questions you should ask when you hire a care manager. So it may not be me, it might be somebody else, but I just want to share with you what is coming from our association of some important questions you should ask when you're looking for this type of service. Now, what I'd like to do is kind of compare. I hear a lot of people say, well, I have a senior advocate or a senior advisor, and they're out there. There's a lot of them out there. So what's the difference between what they do and what we do? Well, number one is of education. A lot of us usually have a degree of training in some discipline. Again, social work, nurses, occupational therapy, attorneys, and so forth. So that's one of them. The other thing that I'm very proud to say is our code of ethics. I work for the client. We do not accept commission from memory care facilities or any other facility that wants us to kind of recruit clients for them. We don't do that. That goes against our code of ethics. So we serve the client. That's who we're working for. And then finally, what I'd like to point out is these are some of the things that care management is consistent on the type of service that we deliver. Usually for my company, my phone line is open from 9 to 5, but if you're a client, my phone line is open to the client if they need me at 10 o'clock at night. And so I have a list of clients that my answering service will answer. And if it's a client of mine, they connect directly to me. So most care managers, you have access to them not only between 9 and 5, but also later in the afternoon if that is needed. We communicate with other disciplines. So we communicate with physicians, with your physical therapist, with your occupational therapist, and so forth. The other thing we look at is how many of our clients are actually up at the hospital again. How many of our clients are stable at home? And that's very important to know because it has to do a lot with not only quality of care, but cost. And so we really want to make sure our families are safe at home and stable at home to avoid those frequent admissions into the hospital. Now, I want to talk a little bit about care partner to caregiver. I know the name sounds a little odd. So I came up with the name because we all start as care partners. We're partners in the journey of caregiving. There does come a time, at least it did for me, that I became the full-time caregiver. So I had to make a lot of decisions about someone that I loved very much, about their medical care. I also had to make a lot of decisions about which music to play because my mother loved the Tejano music. And so I wanted to make sure she was happy. And so I took care of that as well. So for me, my company is unique in that these are the diseases that I usually see of people that call me. Usually someone will say, my loved one has dementia. And I usually ask them, do you know what type? Because dementia, really, it's a broad term, but I really want to know, what am I dealing with? What type of dementia am I dealing with? Because that's a different journey depending on the type of dementia that they have. If someone has mild cognitive impairment and they're still functional, then I know that over a period of time, they may end up Alzheimer's. So we have to prepare for that journey. So I always try to ask the client when I get a call, do you know what type of dementia? Are there any other chronic conditions that they have? So I know what I'm dealing with at the time of the call. So these are very specific, and these are some of the most commons that we hear about, most common dementias that we hear about. So what happens for service? Now, I want you to know that I'm going to give you kind of a case that happened, no names. But what happens sometimes I'll get a call and someone will say, this is what's happening. The family's stressed. They waited a little bit too long to get some help. And they're really upset about kind of what's going on, whether it be in their home or in a facility, either one, it could happen. And then I kind of asked them, you know, just traditional stuff. Tell me your name, who is going to be the client, who's going to be the person that I'm going to be serving, and then who is the caregiver, because those are two different people there. And then I asked them, what do they need? Where are they on the journey? That's important to know, and nobody knows better than you do. The caregiver knows exactly where you're at. Some people will say we're at the beginning, or we're at the middle, or we feel like we're at the end, or we feel like we don't know where we're at. And I try to help them figure out kind of where they're at, because the service will be different depending where they are on the journey. Usually at that time, I say to them, this is what I'm hearing. Is this correct? Do you think this is kind of where you're at? And they'll say yes or no. Typically, they'll add to it because they forgot something during the discussion, which helps me figure out how to customize their particular service. One of the other things I do is I go into the home and I make a home visit if they choose for me to go into their home. Some clients are in a residence. They're in a facility, and I go into that facility and make an assessment. Now, the assessment, that's kind of a broad term, but I want to know who you are. I want to know what you like, what you don't like. I want to know what your wishes are. What do you value? Who are the people that you'd like to communicate with or not? Because we all have those too, right? We all have the people that we really don't want to communicate much with. The other things I look at is how functional a person is. How much can they do? That's called activities of daily living. You hear that a lot. What is it, kind of the basic stuff? Can they go to the bathroom by themselves? Shower? Can they brush their teeth by themselves? There's another assessment called instrumental daily activities of daily living. And what that means, it's a higher functioning, higher level of thinking. So an example would be making a grocery list of things that you need, going to the store, coming back without getting lost, balancing your checkbook, paying your bills. That's what's under instrumental activities of daily living. If someone says to me, they don't do any of that anymore, I do it, then I kind of know where that person is. The other thing I do is I do a home safety check. And I usually will tell the person, this is what I'm going to do when I'm in your home. And that safety check, somebody said to me, well, I got to clean my house. I want to make, no, I'm not there for that. You don't have to clean your house. You don't have to worry about that. What I'm really looking at, how many the grab bars do you have in your bathroom? What kind of hallway do you have? Are there a lot of throw rugs on the floor? Do you have a walker cane? Are you using a wheelchair? So this is a home safety check that I usually do when I go into the home. And it doesn't take very long, but I do ask specific questions for the family. And why do I do that? Because most of us want to stay home. We want to stay as long as we can in our home. So why not make that the safest place we can be while we're there? And then this is the big one, the care plan. Some of you have heard of care plans or plan of care. Anywhere you go, in a hospital, in a facility, and even in care management, we do this. This is kind of like our map. What we do with all the information that we just asked you about, what are the problems that we're seeing? What is it that you want me to address? This is a roadmap for it. This is what I share with the family. These are the things that I see. These are the suggestions, how we should address them. What are your thoughts? And the family will say yes or no. Then I say to them, these are the things I'm going to do to help you. Those are called interventions. And then what we also do within that care plan is to make sure that we're successful. Did we actually complete? Is your home safer? Are you more stable on your meds? Do you have what you need when you're at home? Do you have the sitters that you need where you're at home? Do you like them? Are they responsive to you? Does the agency respond to you when you call? Those types of things are things that usually are part of the care plan. And for some people, this can be very lengthy. And for some people, it can be very, very, very short. So it just kind of depends on what we're facing at the time of the assessment. The care plan is a living document, which means we make changes to it as we go along. Why is that? People get sick, they end up in the hospital, then they come back home, something else happens. Something happens within the family that's upsetting the person that's living with the disease. And so we have to address issues like depression or issues of anxiety. So those things are kind of factored in again in this care plan. We do not at any time prescribe meds, but we work with your physician. I look at the meds, I call the physician and I say, this is what I see on their med list. Is this correct? Or their nurse usually is with, and then they'll concur, yes or no. Or they'll say, no, we don't have them on that. That was discontinued. So those are the things, again, that I look at and talk to the family and say, you're not supposed to take this anymore, and this is why. So those are some of the kind of the problem solving that I try to help my clients as much as I can. I'm going to talk about an uncomfortable topic. And I think I've heard this before. We all want to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die, right? Have you heard that one? And I don't want to sound gruesome, but what I say about end of life care is that a lot of people bring in hospice way too late. End of life care is about being in your home, surrounded by the people you love, and not being taken in and out back into the hospital and having all these aggressive treatments. Is to keep you comfortable and enjoy the rest of the days with dignity and respect. I'm a big advocate for hospice because my mother was on hospice, my father was on hospice, and my father-in-law is on hospice, and now my mother-in-law is on hospice. And it's a quality of life. And the reason I want to talk about that just a little bit is because this is help for the caregiver that Medicare covers. I'm going to say that just one more time. This is help for the caregiver that Medicare covers. And what do you get with that? Well, you get a doctor, a nurse, a social worker, aides, and a chaplain. That is your biggest support team right there. I have a case that we have that right now. They're in hospice and the families, and I said, okay, I can go ahead and step out. And they're like, no, no, no. We want you to kind of oversee everything, make sure things are going smoothly. I'm like, okay, I'll be in once every 2 weeks or when they need me. But the hospice team is there. And the reason I point that out is because this is one of the decisions I have to have with families. How aggressive do you want to get? What do we want to do? And again, I don't want to sound, I know there's kind of this silence here now, but when we talk about these tough issues, that's part of the work that I do, is talk about how do we keep you home, happy, surrounded by your family, without the people that you don't like, that annoy you. Let's get rid of those people, and then have all the people that you have fun with. Let's bring them in so you can have a big party in your home. That's what I'm aiming for. So those things are important. So that's what I do as far as care partner to caregiver. It's a care management service specifically for those living with memory loss. And I only serve Georgetown. I live here in Georgetown. I've been here since 2012. I'm going to also offer you, there are other aging life care professionals in Austin. These are two of them that I've actually met some of the leaders of these companies, and they've been around much longer than I have. Mir Senior Service, Senior Care Management Services in Austin. They're also part of ALCA. And then Care for Debbie Pearson is a registered nurse, and she's been doing it about 20 years. And so we collaborate. I am what we call a solo practitioner. So I'm in, phone rings, I get it. I also do all the other stuff, right? The cook and the bottle washer. But in time, of course, I'll grow the practice. But I want you to know that there's always backup. If I can't serve an individual, we have plenty of people that are care managers that can help the person that needs the help. So I just wanted to let you know about the organization and about other care managers that are available in Austin that serve Georgetown as well. Okay. Because I think my goal really is for us to care for our seniors as much as possible. I think that our elders really deserve quality care. I will take your questions for a few minutes, and I hope that I didn't leave you confused. And I want to thank Mary Jane, her board, for allowing me to speak today with all of you. And you'll see me around, and I promise I'm not going to hand you my card each time. It's mostly to support Mary Jane and her mission, her work that she's doing here in our community that I'm very grateful that we have. So are there any questions? No? I answered them all. I didn't leave you confused. Any questions at all? Okay.
Deb, do we have any questions from the Zoom audience?
No, we don't.
Okay, nope. So we don't. And so we're all okay here. Well, I think then we're ready. Will you like to do the introductions for Miss Teresa?
So Teresa Shapiro is an elder law attorney, and I've known Teresa for, I don't know, 3 or so years. She has a practice in Georgetown that meets with clients, but she lives, I think, in Cedar Park. Is that right, Teresa? Leander? So anyway, Teresa is also a very good resource person about questions that has to do with living with someone with memory loss and all the legal papers that go along with that. So I'd like to introduce my friend, Teresa Shapiro.
Okay, super. And you'll be talking real close like that. But I just want to say thank you to Josie very, very much. Thank you. Excellent talk. Excellent to learn on care management. So this was wonderful. All right. And I'll do this up close so we can get you. And you go.
All righty. Thank you. Thank you, Josie, for the introduction. Thank you for having me today. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share some information with you that a lot of people often have questions about. I have allergies today, so my voice is kind of wavering. So I'm sorry. I'll try to talk as loud as I can without yelling at you. I have been doing this for 23 years. I've lived in Austin much longer than that. I went to the University of Texas School of Law. People always ask, I don't know why, but hook 'em horns. I bleed burnt orange. I have 3 degrees from there. My undergraduate degree is the equivalent of neurobiology degree. Yeah. And so I decided not to go to med school and have kids instead. So it worked out okay. I think I'm a better lawyer than I would have been a doctor. But a number of reasons. But at any rate, I enjoy what I do, and I enjoy being in situations like this where I can provide information for people without any pressure or without it being a sales pitch or without them feeling that they're under any obligation. I just getting the information out. There's so much misinformation out there. I really misinformation. So when you have someone in your family who has been diagnosed with a terminal disease that is a progressive disease, you know when it happens that where it's going to end up. You don't know how, you don't know when, but you know where it's going to end up. And in spite of what we try to believe or pretend, we're all going to die. All of us. So even if you don't have someone in your family who has a diagnosis of a terminal disease, you still need to consider some of the things that you might need to look at towards the end of your life. So I as an elder law attorney, I deal with standard estate planning, which is wills, some trust. I don't sell trust as much as some other attorneys, but wills, trust, probate, powers of attorney, those normal things that happen in an estate plan. What's going to happen to you when you can't take care of yourself? What's going to happen to your stuff when you die? That's what estate planning is about. In addition to that, I do elder law, which is dealing specifically with special needs, whether it be a child who's disabled early, or whether, and yes, we call it elder law, but that's not elder, but it has the same kind of process. Dealing with someone who has a disease or has a form of dementia or physical or mental disability that prevents them from being able to take care of themselves, or will at some point in the near future prevent them from being able to take care of themselves. So we try to plan as far ahead as we can, because the further ahead we plan, the more options we have. When you get down to crisis planning, we're real limited. One of the other parts of that is not just making decisions about that person, but we also need to look at things like, if you had an estate plan with your spouse and your spouse is now being in the beginning stages of dementia, you probably don't want your spouse to be the person named in your power of attorney or in your medical power of attorney, because by the time you need them to do it, they're not going to be able to. And then you have the second person come up. Well, that's why we name second people. The problem with being the second person is banks always want proof, or financial institutions want proof that the first person isn't competent or isn't capable or has died. So you have to go get a letter. We have to go get a letter every 6 months. So if you're going to have to go get a letter every 6 months, that's like 10 things too many for a caregiver to have to deal with. It's just one more thing, but it's 10 things too many. So it's my advice that if you have that situation, you consider redoing those documents for yourself and taking them off as the executor of your estate, taking them off as the agents under your powers of attorney, or in any what we call fiduciary position, any position of trust for you. The other thing is that you don't want your estate to go to your spouse if your spouse is likely to need long-term care in the future and need public benefits for that long-term care, or VA benefits to some extent, because they're going to get a lump sum of money from you and it's going to have to be spent on that care before they're going to qualify for those benefits. If you switch where that money goes to a special needs trust, then if they're not on public benefits, that money can be used for whatever they need. But when they go on public benefits, it becomes a restricted trust that meets the requirements of Social Security and does not prevent them from getting the funds they need from Medicaid, or the VA, but allows them to have money for extra things that aren't covered under those programs. That's why it's called special needs. It's also called a supplemental needs trust. So that's part of the things that I deal with that is there's a bigger scope than just dealing with that person. It's what happens if this happens, or what happens if that happens. And then you also need to look at if that person is going to end up on Medicaid for nursing care at some point in the future, then you need to get your house out of your name. Do not put it in a trust. We did that 20 years ago. Medicaid said, okay, you're going to do this, we're going to make it where if you put it in a trust, it's a countable asset now. We're going to win. If you have your house in a trust, if you transfer it to a trust within 5 years of needing care, needing benefits, it is an uncompensated transfer and you will be disqualified 1 day for every $200 value of your home. If you have it in a trust that you've had for more than 5 years, Medicaid now says you don't own it, so it's a countable asset. Your house is not a countable asset if you own it. So you end up being disqualified because you've now got $600,000 worth of house as an asset. And that's not something we can easily fix. Not at that time. There's ways around it. But what we do recommend is that when you know that this is a possibility, or even in general, just to avoid probate. Sometimes people don't want to do probate. Probate is a expensive process. They don't want to deal with it. They've had a bad situation in another state and it's really terrible. So they don't want to do probate. Well, one of the ways to avoid probate is to do what's called a Lady Bird deed, or a transfer on death deed for your home. You retain all of the rights of ownership and all the privileges of ownership. You do not have to, under either document, get permission from your kids to do anything. In a normal life estate, you get to keep the life estate, but the kids have this remainder interest, so they have to give you permission to lease your house, or get a mortgage against it, or borrow an equity loan, or move into something else and rent it out. With the Lady Bird deed and a transfer on death deed, with neither of them do you have to do that. You have all those rights and privileges, and they don't have a say. But at that point, it is an uncompleted gift. So it's not a transfer. because IRS doesn't see it as completed because they don't have any true interest in the house until you die. So it's not completed. It's kind of a defective gift is what they call it. And Medicaid doesn't see it as a gift for the same reason. You've still got all the rights and privileges. You can still sell it. You can do whatever you want. But, and it's still in your name. So it's an exempt asset unless you have $690,000 worth of equity. Not market value equity. So it's an exempt asset. It doesn't count as a transfer. And when you die, it's not a probate asset because it transfers by virtue of that deed. Medicaid only recovers against probate assets. So if you get Medicaid, you don't lose your house because it's not in the probate assets. And if you set up your other accounts correctly, you can probably avoid probate. I still recommend you have a will because most people don't do what they're told to do. They forget. Yeah, they're like kids, you know, you tell them, put everything in, put all your accounts, do all this with all your accounts. Okay. And then they forget 3 of them. And it happens to be the 3 with the most money in it. So now we have to probate anyway. But so that's kind of the way that works. Caregiving is a really important thing. You also need to know that when you get to an advanced stage of dementia, powers of attorney will fail. We do them for dementia. But for instance, if you have a person who is demented and is in it, you place them in a facility care and they have not been adjudicated. In other words, a court has not determined them to be incompetent. They have all the rights and privileges of any other adult. So if you put them in that facility and they decide they don't want to be there, they can walk out the door and you can't stop them legally. You can go coerce them to go back. You can go beg and plead and say, I'm going to be mad at you, not come visit you or not let you move back into my house or whatever threats you want to make, but you can't legally force them to go back, nor can the facility force them to stay there. That's why a lot of memory care units are locked down. So it makes that a lot harder. And usually they're good at distracting people and getting them away from the idea that they want to escape, but it happens. There was recently one that escaped from a memory care unit in Austin, was found dead 3 days later because they didn't look for him in the right places. So it happens. It's sad. It happens. So when that becomes a problem, the only way that you can have the power to make them stay somewhere and enforce the facility keeping them there against their will is to have a guardianship. And that's another level of stuff. We don't like to do them. We're advised and required by law to look for the least restrictive alternative. But when it gets to that point, or when I have a case right now where a woman has been like, she writes checks, she runs up credit cards. As soon as she loses those, she just goes and gets another one. She's gotten payday loans. She refuses to, she doesn't tell her kids about it till she's in trouble. And, you know, she's had banks shut her down because she's had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars of overdraft fees. So this woman needs a guardianship because she is not going to willingly agree to let her son help her with this money. And she's convinced that she can do it on her own. Well, she's made a horrible mess of all of it. And it's taken him some time to get it back on an even keel with her cooperation. And now she stopped cooperating. So he needs to get a financial guardianship of her to prohibit her from being able to do any of this stuff. And under that, he can prove to anybody she gets a credit card from that she didn't have the legal capacity to do that credit card. And so they're stuck with it. But that's a problem. That's what happens. That's why guardianship exists. Unfortunately, you know, I tell people 99% of the time, you're never going to have a problem with power of attorney, 99% of the time. But there's that 1% of the time when it's absolutely critical that you get guardianship for the protection of their estate or of them or both. A guardianship is restricted because it strips that person of their rights as a human being. They are no longer allowed to drive. It's reported to the DMV in Texas. So they don't get to have a driver's license. It's run through a system. They can't own or possess a firearm. They can't one. They can't vote. They can't register to vote. Although I have one guardianship pending right now that when you file a guardianship, you hire an attorney to represent you. And you're saying, I need to get guardianship of my mom. So the court says, fine, your mother needs to have an attorney, but your mother is not, you're saying she's not competent, so she can't hire an attorney because if you're right, her contract with that attorney is void. So most attorneys won't represent somebody that's got a guardianship filed against them. So there's a whole group of us that volunteer to be what's called an ad litem, and we get appointed by the court and we act as the attorney for that proposed ward. And I say we volunteer because the court only pays like a third of what we all charge for our hourly rate, but we do it anyway. It needs to be done. And so when in this particular case, when the ad litem attorney went to speak with his ward, he came back and he said, okay, she's not against it. She's not against her son being the guardian. She just wants to get to vote. I figure she's no worse than about half the crazy people that vote. So what's the difference? So I'm putting it into the order for her to retain her right to vote. So it won't go to the registrar and she won't be able to not vote. That's between her and her son. But I just thought that's weird. Of all the things she loses, that's the one thing she wanted to hold on to. But we try to accommodate it if we can. She's not going to do any harm to anybody. I mean, one vote's not going to make a difference that much usually in an election. And so, you know, it's not detrimental to the community or to her. So if it makes her happy, make her happy, let her vote. But otherwise, it take a lot of those rights away. You don't get to choose where you live. You don't get to choose how your money is used, except that the court monitors it and makes sure that it's used for you. And that there's a guardian has to file a report every year in the court, has to be done by an attorney, and it has to be filed in the court. That's a full accounting of where you started the year, what came in, what went out, and where it went. And that has to be done every year under guardianship. You also have to file a report on the condition of the ward. That's something you fill out by hand. The forms are on the court websites. You fill them out by hand and you turn them into the county court, the county clerk at the office. That just has to be signed by the guardian. Attorneys don't get involved, except we have to e-file everything now. We don't get to go down to the courthouse anymore or mail stuff in. We have to actually e-file it. And so if I'm doing an accounting for someone, I will e-file their report on the condition at the same time so they don't have to mess with it. And or if they'll bring it to me, otherwise I'll just file it for them next time I'm filing something, because it's easier and it gets it through the system the normal way. It doesn't get lost on some clerk's desk. So these are kind of the primary things that happen. Special needs trust, there's a lot of different ways you can handle them. There's places like the Arc of Texas, which is a pooled trust. So if you have a small amount of money, you can put that special, instead of it being a standalone special needs trust, you can put the money into this pooled trust, which means you have a piece of this larger trust. So it's beneficial in generating more money and having a larger investment in things. And so the distribution of wealth is the interest and stuff is better. The appreciation is better. And then each person gets their own percentage of that total back. So if you own 10% of the total trust, then you get 10% of the proceeds. If you own 50% of the trust, you get 50% of the proceeds. People usually wouldn't have that much money in it because it's a lot. They might have 100 people in that pooled trust. Arc of Texas does a really good job of that. They've been around since before I was around, and they have a management team that keeps up with the changes in Social Security and the changes in the laws regarding special needs trust, so it's always in compliance. They file all the proper tax forms and all of that kind of stuff. So there's some advantage, especially if it's a small trust. However, it's my opinion that most families would rather the family have control of it. And if you have somebody in the family that's willing to do that and understands the responsibility of doing it, and it understands the work that it takes to do it, then that's fine. I find a lot of parents assume, and when we have a special needs child, especially, a lot of parents assume that the next oldest sibling is going to be the one that's going to be the caregiver because they're the older sibling and they should take care of them. They should want to do that. I'm willing to bet you that older sibling is not fond of the special needs child, because that has been an issue in their life since the day that child was born. And they would like to get away from it. So don't make those assumptions. Don't make that assumptions with your children, that your children will be willing to take care of your spouse who's demented or has issues. It's very difficult, and not everybody is emotionally or financially or physically able to take on that kind of responsibility. So be certain that you talk about these things. As Josie said, these are uncomfortable conversations. They're very uncomfortable conversations. I strongly recommend that you start a policy of once a year, if not more often, having family meetings where you sit down and say, nobody's leaving this room till we talk about this stuff. We're locking the door and everybody's staying here and we're going to have this discussion. This is what I want to happen to me when I die. This is what I want to happen to me if I'm sick. This is what I want to happen to him if I'm sick, or to her if I'm sick. And this is what's going to happen to the stuff when I die. And if you people want anything, you need to tell me, because otherwise it's getting sold and you're getting money instead. Or you're not getting the money, I'm spending it before I die. So, I mean, I tell people that's my estate plan. My last check will bounce. But just have communication is the #1 tool you have in your toolbox, and you need to use it. It makes life easier for you. It makes life easier for your kids. And at some point during the year, you ought to be able to get everybody together in one way or another. If you can't do it in person, you can do it on Zoom now. You know, we do, thank goodness for Zoom. And if they hang up, you call them back. You know, we're going to talk about this, whether you like it or not. And you need to think about what your wants are, just like you need to. And you need to make sure they know it. If you want to be buried in the Fort Worth Zoo, then you need to tell them, I want to be in the Fort Worth Zoo. How you get me there, that's your problem, but that's where I want to be. You know, or I want to be in the Gulf, or I want to be thrown off the Eiffel Tower. I used to tell my kids that, so I said it was the only way I was getting to Paris. You need to let them know what your plans are. My mother, may she rest in peace, had a 25-page moment by moment description of her funeral. She planned her funeral like most teenage girls plan their weddings. You know, it was a big thing for her, what color the flowers would be and what music should be played and who should sing and who should play the trumpet and when it should be and who they should sit with and what hymns what scripture should be read and who should do it and who should do the eulogy and what they should say. She wrote her own eulogy. Seriously, that's my mom. It's a big thing, but if it's a big thing to you and it means a lot to you, you're not going to be here. You're not really going to know, but at least it gives your kids the idea that that was important and maybe they should do it for you in honor of you. And then you'll get some assurance from them that they're going to do it. Like I said, you may not know whether they did it or not, but you know, at least you tried. It's the best chance you have of having the end of life you want to have. And while I agree with Josie that most of the time, all of us would prefer to die at home with our family present, sometimes that's not possible. And sometimes you need to consider the people you're leaving behind. Because sometimes spouses who've been long-term spouses don't want to stay where their spouse died. So you may be forcing your spouse to move out of the house because they can't live there anymore. Because they don't want to be where you died. They don't want to lay in that bed anymore. They don't want to sit at that table anymore. They don't want to be there because that's where you died. You need to have that conversation with them before you make an absolute positively, this is what I want without question. Sometimes people just get sick enough and have issues enough that they can't stay home. So the person who's taking care of them also needs to say, I am not going to feel guilty if things come about that I can't keep you at home. I will keep you at home as long as possible. That's the promise you make. And you're the one that gets to define what's possible. Sometimes you just can't do it anymore. Sometimes when you've got somebody who's really, really sick and you're taking care of them all day long, them being there every day and you have no privacy and you have no time and you have no freedom, they're there and you have to take care of them. Even if you get a respite for an hour or 2 or 3 or 4, you're still there taking care of them all the time. And sometimes that just gets to be too much. Sometimes you need a more definitive break than that. You need to be able to go to bed at night and sleep in tomorrow till noon and not get out of your pajamas. You know, whatever your thing is, you need to be able to do that. You can't do that when you're a caregiver full time on your own. Sometimes family can help. But I remember when my kids were little, I used to say the hardest thing for me was I never got to have time away from my kids at home. That's why people send their kids off to spend the weekend with the grandparents when they're close enough. Mine weren't. But when your kids are there all the time, you can hire babysitters and you can go away, but you're not at home. You can't just sit in your favorite chair and snuggle up with your husband or your wife and have a drink and talk about the future without kids running around. And sometimes those are important moments. And so it's always the hardest thing to get time alone at home. So remember that when you're thinking about being a caregiver and kind of plan that in. See if you can find, there's a lot of places where they have half-a-day daycare programs. Churches have a lot of them. Other communities have a lot of them. And community situations, the Alzheimer's groups have them. I'm assuming the Parkinson's groups have them as well. And so utilize those. Take your person to a daycare for a morning or a day a week or a day every 2 weeks or a day once a month. Give yourself a day at home. Your sanity depends on it. So anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am. They basically do the same thing. There's some nuances of difference. Individual attorneys have a preference. Mine is a Lady Bird deed because it's what it was available first and it's what I learned and it's what I've got the most experience with. There's some differences in how you can handle successor beneficiaries and a couple of things like that that aren't real significant, but they're different. Oh, all right. She asked what was the difference between a Lady Bird deed. It's not a trust, it's a deed, or a transfer on death deed. Okay. Right. Well, they take place, you file them as soon as you execute them, you record them with the deed in the county file. But when the second spouse dies, you will typically, sometimes with a married couple, you can set it up to be that when the first spouse dies, the kids get hit their half. And when you die, they get the second half. Some people like that because it builds in protection to keep mom from being, or dad from being taken advantage of by somebody and getting upside down on the house or whatever. And so are marrying again and giving the house to the new spouse. Right. So that's one thing of consideration. But when the second one of you dies, then it gets distributed to your kids, or when that person dies. So they get your half. If both of you are gone, they get the whole thing. And they are then titled to that house. It's titled in their names. They can sell it, they can do whatever they want, but it's in their names. Okay.
So they're kind of the same thing, just a different instrument of getting it
Right.
done.
It's the same thing. When Lady Bird deeds were created, they've been around a very long time. They were actually, the reason it's called a Lady Bird deed was because Lady Bird Johnson was the first one to use one. So that's how long they've been around. They've been around since then. Texas legislature, not the session immediately before this one, but the session before that, set up a transfer on death deed. And like I said, it has some nuances that are different, but basically they accomplish the same thing.
And those are neither are probatable. So if you ended up needing Medicaid,
Right. Neither, when you have a ladybird death, when it's transfers by virtue of deed, it doesn't go through probate. Just like bank accounts and investment accounts are beneficiary designated accounts. You can set up your bank accounts to be beneficiary designated accounts. So if you do that, they pass by virtue of law, not by virtue of probate. So if that's that situation where if you do all the things you're told to do, you can avoid probate. But somebody forgets. So you end up with something that ends up in probate. I'd say probably 40 to 50% of the time. They open a new bank account and forget to make it pay on death. Or they sell a house and forget to do a new ladybird deed. So things happen. Right. She's asked if that would be why I would advise not to get a trust to put everything you own in it. There are reasons to have a trust that you put stuff in. There are reasons not to. It depends on your specific situation. Mostly, my opinion is I follow the sort of general rule of thumb with most attorneys that don't just exclusively sell trusts, that if you have a blended family, you got remarried, you had stuff, he had stuff, he has kids, you have kids. When you die, you want it split back out to who gets what. A trust accomplishes that very well. And it allows the spouse to have use of those funds if they need them until their death. But it protects the dead spouse from the getting the other spouse remarrying and their kids losing out. So it protects that way. That's a good thing for a trust. Another situation is if you own property in multiple states, more than Texas. If you have a house here and you have a piece of the family farm in Kansas and you have a timeshare in Florida and another one in Hawaii, and then you want to have a trust because you have to do probate in every state you have property in. The third thing is if you have a very complex estate. If you own several businesses and you have rent properties and you have family limited partnership and all of this stuff that has to be dealt with, a trust is the way you do it.
Okay, so if we just have one house in Texas and multiple investment accounts, they can all be paid.
Well, your accounts, your investment accounts are always beneficiary designated. When you set them up, you got a form that said, here's my beneficiary. And you filled it out and you gave it back to them. You need to check them periodically to make sure that they're still who you want to be your beneficiary. But they're beneficiary designated. They do not pass under a trust unless you stick that account in the trust or unless you pay it to the trust, which you generally don't want to do.
So what would be probatable?
There, a house that's not any titled property that is not on a transfer deed, whether it be a motor vehicle in Texas won't require it because you can transfer them with an affidavit at the county clerk's office. But if you had an airplane, you have a big boat, you have a house, again, a vacation house, you have stocks, not mutual funds, but stocks that are in your name, those are titled property. So if those don't have a beneficiary designation built into that title, they're probatable. Cash in banks that is not on a transfer death or pay on death account is a probatable asset. Jewelry, expensive jewelry, things like that.
But
Can
you can
be.
put that in a will and then.
Right. Well, you do put them in a will from the standpoint of there's a personal needs of memo that becomes a codicil to your will that you fill out by hand after you do your will, and it becomes part of your will by virtue of that. But you generally just list the big stuff, the stuff you want to go to somebody specific, because otherwise nobody has the legal authority to do that. Powers of attorney die with you. So if you want your great niece to have your diamond ring, you need to do a personal effects memo to give your person the legal authority to get that to them. If you don't do a will, you basically do that as a holographic will with a letter of instruction to the people you think will be handling your estate. So if you think your son's going to take care of it and he's going to go to the bank and do all this stuff, you know, get the money that's been in a pay on death account, get it all set up, get it all distributed, then you write him a letter and you say, these are this is attached is my handwritten holographic will that says, these are what I want to go, where I want stuff to go. If they fight over it, probate that will. If they don't fight over it, you don't ever have to do anything with it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
But I'm questioning, I thought you said something about if I was power of attorney and my 2 kids are listed below me, does my power of attorney, if something happens to me, automatically fall to one of them?
Yes, if something happens to you, the next person in line takes over. The only thing where that's a problem, I mean, where I said it was a problem is the other way. If he's the first person on yours, he's already out of the picture. You need to redo your power of attorney and get rid of him, because otherwise your kids have to prove that he's incompetent. They have to have that letter from the doctor to prove he's incompetent, and before the secondary person can take over. So it just is more simple. It's simpler just to do a new document. You don't have to worry about your document for him. It would be the same thing. You're there first. And if you can't do it or something happens to you, yes, your daughter would step up, but then she could do a new one. Well, she can't do a new one because he's no longer competent. Right. Right. So that's why we asked for 3 people to begin with. And so we have a succession. And if you don't have a choice, I mean, if you can't renew a nut one, like right now, he couldn't sign a new one. So you just deal with that letter. That's the situation. But if you're in a situation where you can eliminate the need for that letter, your kids will appreciate it. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. You can file it. Some attorneys do. I prefer not to. The reason I prefer not to is it gets put in the records. It doesn't give it any more legal authority or any less legal authority. It's just put in the records. Okay, so that was fine today. 5 years from now, you change it and you don't record it. Well, when you changed it, the person you dropped off didn't like it. So when something happens to you, they're going to go to that court and get the registered one and say, this was the registered one, and get rid of the other one.
Was still competent. So she changed the power of attorney to the caregiver, added her to the bank, took me off as pay on death. And so it got pretty dicey.
Well, that's when you go talk to an attorney about doing a guardianship.
So I didn't know any of that was done. So
No, so
That's why
that's the only way you can remove an agent under a power of attorney that you think is being exploited is by guardianship. You can't just say, I'm taking over now. The court has to actually remove them. And they do that under guardianship. So you need to go file guardianship for your stepmom.
she's dead now. But
Yeah, but that's what you needed to do. When you found that out, that's what you do.
well,
You
I
can go
didn't
now
find
and you
it
can,
until she died.
well, if she's got money that she took from probate or got that way, you can file in the court, in the probate court, to have her have that power of attorney pulled back and revoked under exploitation. You can prove undue influence.
I into a weird one recently, and I don't, if anybody else here is caught up in this as well. I'm retired military and civil service, and during my time there, I built up a TSP account, and then I got married. all that TSP account is still for mine and it's set up, go to my children. Recently, I wanted to move it to an external investment company. And they told me I had to get I actually had to get my wife's approval to move that money, even though she was not part of my life when I accrued that investment.
Okay. You created the investment before you were married.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And what happened to the money that the appreciation in that over the years? Did you pull it off or did you put it in the account?
No, it's sitting in the account.
Okay. It's community property.
Okay. That's
Texas law is that separate property you have before you get married or you receive by inheritance or gift is separate property. So long as you keep it separate.
okay.
The income earned from that property is community property because it's income earned during the marriage. So if it rolls back into that account, you have done what's called commingling and it becomes community property.
Yeah, because the federal government's the one that made me get her.
That
Yes,
happens.
everybody,
It
yeah.
happens in bad ways. Stuff happens.
Yeah.
Even you've got somebody that has a house before they get married and they don't make their person sign a statement that that house is separate property and retain separate property. At most, they would be entitled to reimbursement for any community property funds used to pay taxes or upkeep or insurance or whatever. They don't do that. They die. Spouse claims against the house.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
No, you stay up here. I know this has been great and we've got a lot more questions. Teresa will be over here so you can go on and ask her some more. Carol, I'm going to ask you to turn the light on, raise it up. But anyway, I want to say thank you very much. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we're just about through, but don't leave. Don't think that we're leaving. We're not. Let's see. Come over here and let me grab this one. Okay. Okay, this is, I want to be sure and introduce Janie. Janie, if you want to start walking up here for just a few minutes there. Janie teaches our voice exercise class. And so you're going to get an opportunity to speak out. But I want to remind you, I do need some people to be sure and stay to help me put up these chairs and the tables, because that's part of our responsibility to do that. But Janie, I would like for you to. Yeah, oh, I know. Yeah, this one over here, it was Halloween. And so I got, yes. I thought that was very interesting. I did not know this till I was looking up stuff. You had a congenital cleft lip. I did not know that. They did a fabulous job with surgeries. I'd never noticed it. Anyway, okay, here you go.
Hi, everybody. And I know we're pushing overtime, so hello. All right, are we still on the Zoom? Okay, because I was going to go off the. Can I just go loud?
Oh, no, they can't.
That's it. Okay. All right. All right, guys. I am Janie Bush. I'm a speech pathologist. I work with All Care Therapies of Georgetown. We are currently temporarily located out on 195, but we are anxiously awaiting our move to our new facility over on Williams Drive in the 3600 block. And so if you've ever been to any of our been to our therapy, it's off of Williams Drive over there by behind McDonald's. That was our first facility. We're temporarily off of 195, but we're moving down the road on Williams to in the 3600 block. We have physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. We have clients, we have clinicians that are trained in LSVT Big and Power, and I'm trained in LSVT Loud and Speak Out. I primarily do Speak Out with my folks. And how many have gone through any kind of voice training? All right, good handful. Great. All right, so some of the things that I focus on, and I'm going to pull up my, whoopsie. That wouldn't be good. I'm going to pull up a photo I have. One of the mantras of speaking with intent, that's with our Speak Out program, speaking with intent means that you focus, you concentrate, you be purposeful, you be mindful, you take control of your speech, you put forth conscious effort, you say it like you mean it. I like this one particularly. You ignore what feels natural or normal and you be deliberate. And what I mean by that is that a lot of times with Parkinson's, our interpretation of how we sound is skewed a bit from what is reality. You think you're being loud enough, but possibly you're not. Think about your movement. You think I think I'm walking just fine, but actually you're very slow in your gait, your small steps. And so you think you're moving well enough, but as I've said, often Parkinson's is a thief and a liar, and somebody else said a fraud and a phony. So it makes you think, you know, I got it, I got this, whatever. So I'm going to take you through some of my exercises that I do in the class. I do, as Mary Jane said, I do the Parkinson's voice exercise twice a month. I join up with the singing group that meets on Mondays here at the facility over in the education building. We meet 2 o'clock, and 2 times a month they're singing, and 2 times a month I come and we do vocal exercises. So we're going to do some of them. Are you ready? All right, good. What I want you to do is first of all, get up in your seat. If you've slid down in your seat, get your fanny back and sit up nice and straight. If you feel like you need to stand up, you stand up. Certainly you've been sitting there for a while. All righty. So what I want you to do is put your hand on your belly, because we're going to get aware of your voice, okay, or of your breath supply. Our respiration is the building blocks for your vocalization. So your respiration's very imperative. We're going to go with some diaphragm breathing, okay? You're going to take it in through your nose, fill up your belly, and out. And what I want you to do is I want you to feel your ribs expand. All right. A lot of times our breathing gets small. That's the other thing. Parkinson's is a disease of smallness, I call it. Small breathing, small talking, small walking, small movements. And you got to put the mind over the matter. Like that said, be deliberate. So you got to think, I got to breathe big. So let's do it again. Kind of get your fingers where you can feel those ribs expand. Take a nice big breath and blow it out. All right, do it again 2 more times. Big breath in and out. Big breath in and out. Very good. Now, the next building block is phonation. Okay, phonation, or the laryngeal movement. Your vocal cords have to move to get action going, to get that sound out. So we're going to get a good breath of air, and we're going to tie another subsystem, which is articulation. Okay, so we got the breathing, we got the phonation, you got your sound, and you got the mouth movement. And we're going to do something very simple. We're going to go may, me, ma, mo, moo. And what we're doing there, we're engaging the mouth to get going, okay? A lot of times I always tell this story. I'm from Western Kentucky, and some of the folks I worked with in West Kentucky, well, they can just talk like this all day long, and they don't move their mouth, but they talk about around the corner down there by the farm, you know, and so they're barely moving their mouth. And so that, if they ended up with some Parkinson's, they're going to end up being a mush mouth. All right. So they got full capability to move in that mouth. So I want you to really engage. Okay. Get a good breath of air. I want to hear you nice and loud. Okay. It's very simple. M connected with the vowels. Ready? Let's go. May, me, my, mo, moo. 3 more times. May, me, my, mo, moo. Sounded like West Kentucky, didn't it? My. All right, let's go again. May, me, my, mo, moo. Very good, very good. Next exercise, that's called the warm-up exercise. The next one is the sustained ah. Now, a lot of people, because we talk about getting strong, be intent with your voice, then they start to yell, okay? I'm trying to get that out. I know, sorry about that. But I want you to get it from deep. And what you're wanting to do is sustain that ah as if it's coming up and is going on out the door down there. So good breath of air. Good, good. Now, what I do in our therapy group, and if I'm working with you personally, I'm going to say, let's try for 15. But if you get 10, I'm excited. That's great. But we're going to always try to get to 15. So let's do that. I'm going to count them on my left hand here. All right, good breath of air. After a long day, yeah, someone's keeping going. That's great. All righty. So challenging yourself. Now, I can't pick you out individually, but you got to listen to yourself, because if you're scratching it, you're hurting your vocal cords. What you want is that up and movement. If you want to think about your trachea here being a PVC pipe with a couple of rubber bands at the top of it, that's what I have some people think about. Just take a good breath. Let's do it again. Oh. Okay, good. So you get the idea. All right, so that's your sustained ah. All right, the next one we do is a glide. Now, I always get the fight back. Janie, I'm not a singer. And said, I understand that. I'm not either. But the only time I sang good is when I went to choir and I sat next to Jeannie. But I can get that glide going, okay? So we're going to start at a low tone and you're going to rise it up to a high tone, okay? Let me show you what I mean. Oh. Now, in some other therapies, like in LSVT, they have you go up and you come down. What we work on is just make the quality good in the speak out. We go up and you stop and take a breath. You're up on the mountain and come down. So let's do 2 more rounds. Are you ready? Oh. Let's go to the end. Oh. Very good. I'm going to move on. The next thing we do is a counting exercise. And why counting? Counting engages everything. All right. You engage your breath support, you engage your phonation, you get that mouth going. All right. And what we'll do is we'll count to 5, take a breath, and then to 10, 15, then 20. Are you ready? All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Breathe. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. You get the idea. So you got to get that mouth engaged. And as it goes on up, you can hit the harder ones like 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. Take a breath. 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. So you can really challenge yourself. You can really challenge yourself up the scale. And what you're thinking about is exaggerated mouth movements. All right. Counting. Then we'll do a reading task. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to give you some phrases. I don't want to hold you too much longer here. All right. Repeat these phrases after me, nice and loud and with lots of animation. Are you ready? Honey, I'm home. Welcome home. There you go. I'm speaking with intent. I love it. No, thank you. Can we go now? Good morning. How are you? All right, I love it the way you're adding. All right, where are you going? What time is it? Nope, I have therapy, thank you. All right, good night. I love you. Good. All right. And then we would finish our session with a cognitive exercise. I'm not going to make you do that right now. You have overdone your brain with listening to all our wonderful speakers there. So I know we're pushing late today. I thank you for your time. Be intent with your voice. Okay. Those that are having the Parkinson's and you're noticing a little bit changes, mind over matter, guys. Pick up the vocal, move your mouth. Everybody deserves to be able to hear you and know exactly what you have to say. Well, maybe. All right. I thank you for your time. Y'all are fabulous.
Janie, thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, if you guys want to do this on the 2nd and 4th Mondays, Janie is at our class. Now, next month, though, we have a few changes. So be sure you check with my my email to let you know. Yeah, it'll be 1st and 3rd next month only, but most time it's 2nd and 4th. But anyway, she's awesome. She's a speech therapist, and I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Okay, now just have a few more things, and we have the door prizes, and then we just need to put this up. So let me grab this real quick because I've got a couple of announcements. Tickets. Got you. Everybody got their tickets ready? And if you didn't get a ticket, do you need one? But I guess you all got tickets ready. Wait. Okay. While you're getting your tickets ready, I want to let you know next month is April. And April is Parkinson Awareness Month. We have the folks from Michael J. Fox Foundation coming, and possibly a third one. For sure, I've got 2 committed. They are coming, one from New York and one from Dallas. But it's going to be a really good meeting. So I want y'all to be sure to come. I was just talking to Danny, and it was on different beds, and he wants to ask some questions. I said, this is a perfect one because these guys are on the forefront of doing research, and you can find out some of the latest stuff. So anyway. Okay, now, are we ready? What is this first thing we're doing?
A mystery street, number 1.
I think it's a bag. It looks like it's a good carry bag. It's part of that 31 or 30 something other. Okay, so here it is for a bag. Oh, we got Okay. And this number, I'm just going to get the last three, which is 347. 347. Now remember, if they're not here, you gotta be present to win. We can keep doing it. 3, 4. Oh, wait, do we have somebody? Oh, looky here. We got a winner. Our Don Benedict. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Then our next item is going to be, oh, that's that clock, huh? Okay. The clock. Okay. Ready? It's a really neat clock. I think it's a Texas clock or something like that. Now, just FYI, a decorative clock. Okay. Just so you'll know, we're going to do a gala. That's how we got these things. And the gala never, because of COVID. So I'm just about running out of all the silent auctions. So if you're ever at some place that you patronize often, feel free to ask them for a door prize. I can do a tax deductible letter for them. I can do business cards, whatever they want for documentation. But if you do get any door prizes, please get them and bring them, and then I will give them out again. But anyway, thank you. So that's what we're coming toward the end of ours. But then this number, the lucky winner is 3. Anybody got a 3 for the last 3? 7 0 370. Oh, we got a winner. Winner. It's Miss Julie. All right. Okay. Well, super. Well, listen, Josie and Carrie did a fabulous job. And if you would like to talk to them, they're still right there. Those will be the last tables we will put up. If you have a few minutes to help us lift up the chairs, we've got a stand for the chairs to go on, and then we could all together fold up the tables. And then we have our mobile library we need to pack up. But thank you all for coming. I'll see y'all next month, and hopefully I'll see you in voco exercise and in chair yoga. Okay, bye guys. Okay.